Well, Aluc Dracul is one of the most misinterpreted things. They needed a surname, so I just invented Dracul. Aluc actually stands for the arithmetic unique control. So it's nice to be here and see all your ladies and gentle nerds. And it's awesome to be on this conference, and I want to just thank those Killers of Dragons for organizing this great event. It's a big honor to be here. Today we want to talk about PGP. Actually, we don't want to talk about PGP in particular, but more about what is broken in public key crypto. This lecture goes in several parts. So in the first part of the lecture, I decided to make sure we all speak the same language. So we have a little recap of what RSA is and discrete logarithm and stuff like this. In the second part, we're going to talk about the fun stuff, how to attack it. And in the third part, we're going to talk about the model of trust we live in this very moment. So who am I? I'm $random nerd. My job is break things, so I'm a hacker. Sure enough, always terrible, always drinking, and still learning, as all of us. There is some little notation for this talk. Don't worry, it's not going to be heavy on math, but there are a few formulas in the talk. So we have the regular notations, which all of you know. So X is plaintext, Y is the ciphertext, E is the encryption function, D the decryption function, and we have the K, the key, and sure enough, a key space, but I don't think we need this in this lecture. The question is, why will we do that? Well, that's the reason why. Actually, it's a funny picture. You know, that is the US Embassy in Berlin, and they actually projected it on the embassy. Yeah, last year, actually, or the year before last year, Mr. Snowden decided to have a little talk with the public, and the public found out what we never knew, that secret services doing secret service, and that spies are spying, not just in the movies, and they do this because they get paid for it. And you know who's going to pay them? Us. And so we now decide that's not cool. And the question is, what can we do against it? And I always hear, oh, you have to encrypt your message, that's secure. So, well, we do encrypt our message and see how secure that is. Who of you ever played with public key crypto? And the rest never saw an HTTPS site? Well, the founding paper in public key crypto was done by actually three people. That is, sure enough, Diffie-Hellman and Merkle. They had the founding paper, which was actually published 1976, and it was probably the first scheme which was introduced of public key crypto. So what we do there is we have some public parameters. We take a group by G. We have some integers, which we might use some primes or elliptic curve or whatever. And then we have some generator of the group. And what happens is we exchange keys. Alice sends her key or her message, G to the A, raised to the G to the raised to the power of A mod P. Bob does the same with his G to the power of P. Then both of them gonna compute their private messages. And what's gonna happen is we have the problem to compute G to the AB out of G to the A and G to the B from public information. That is now, since 1976, the case. And we still have the underlying algorithm, which is discrete logarithm, and we still think this problem is hard. We use RSA. Whoever used RSA of you guys? So you know how it works. You have a shared key, a public key, and you have a private key. And those keys are actually the product of a n is the multiplication of p by q, modulus the encryption exponent or the decryption exponent. So we exchange our keys, we send our message, and the other one can decrypt the key. This talk is not about how RSA works, it's just a quick overview. I expect you actually to know that. So given that n and e and c compute so that compute x so that x to the raised to the power of the exponent is the same like c mod n is a problem which we think is hard if you have to find this out of public information. So we have a math program which calls Sage. Who knows Sage? Sage is awesome. So we can do this in Sage. And that's actually how it looks like. So we have here our random prime, which we have here 2 to the power of 512. And we compute it, we raise it to the actually most used exponent in the internet. And we encrypt our message. Something on this equation is wrong. What is it? Does anybody know? What is, this textbook RSA, but what is wrong with it? Would you use it the way it is? Okay, let's raise it to the power of 1024. Would you use it the way it is? Why not? You have an idea? What? Why? I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about the bigger problem. We have no padding in this equation. So you don't want to use it in real world. There's no padding. So what we do there is we factor actually our primes. And so it reduces the attack type may be reduced to factorization, maybe not. Our factor should not be NP complete unless something really strange happens and we just run into it. But now we got to the real talk. The question is, what is the attack types? What do you think how we attack this? So we have a public key crypto and we're supposed to be the attacker. What could we do? Which, huh? Social engineering? Yes. Is this all? What else could we do? What? What is man in the middle? How can you man in the middle when they have a encrypted channel? You have to first break their encryption before you can really man in the middle. Or you do an attack, which I mention much later in this talk. But what else do we have? Go more to theoretical models of attack. What could we do? He said social engineering, very right. You want one?
Generate this random large prime number, they use heuristic algorithms, and they are heuristic algorithms, so they don't always work right.
So you're planning on working on, let's say, implementation flaws?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, okay. So we have two attacks already. We have the implementation flaw and we have the social engineering. Is there anything else we could use? We could try to steal the private key, which is social engineering if we steal it. That is actually social engineering because you go to this place and you attack the machine directly. So you have to go to the machine, try to go to my machine without my permission. You have to social engineer your way to the machine. There are more attacks than we have brute force as an attack. Would you agree? No? Yes? No? Yes? And we can do another thing, we can analyze as an attack. So we just gather a lot of stuff and we analyze what we find. And that's actually what we do in this lecture. So our attack types is brute force, analyzing, social engineering, and using implementation flaws, right?
Quantum attacks. Quantum attacks.
Quantum attacks is very funny, but in the moment we're not as ready yet. But we're getting there, don't worry. So which type of attack do we have? Sure enough, the most used to attack the RSA, for an example, is factoring. So there are different ways of factoring it. So you have some algorithm which are used for specific cases. You have some random algorithm, so you know the algorithm like Pollard row, Pollard p-1 sieving. I think the most used in the moment is number filled sieving. And they have some papers published, so we don't need to go into that. That is what we in the moment currently use to brute force those things. We use number field sieving to find a common factor, which we maybe can divide to calculate or compute the private key. But there was a paper which came out, I think, 2013, from Kleinjung, Lestra, and Page, I think. And they computed how much does it cost to factor. And if you could look at it, like the 512-bit is quite easy. Going over there, it becomes more expensive, but it's still doable. And here we go, I think a $random 3-letter service is capable of doing so. I think they get the money, and that's ECU time, which means it's an Amazon, rent in on Amazon. We don't talk about their own networks. I mean, if you look at the NSA, they have piles of computers. I think they have like whole stacks of Aldi computers. So they have enough power to compute that, right? But if we look at this, that maybe is too much, right? Yeah. So that means we just use a large key and we save, right? Sure, we save, yeah. So that takes out our brute force attack, but we still can analyze stuff, do social engineering, and use implementation flaws. Let's go for that. How does crypto look like in the praxis? What is what we're gonna have? What do we find in the wild? Do we really find the perfect randomness? Do we really find everything perfect in place? Nope. We find a lot of random generation flaws. We find repeated keys and key collisions. We find, or actually we don't find, but we have a very funny trust model. So we do trust people we do not know for any reason with our secret keys, for an instant. So random number generation flaws, what can we do? We can collect a lot of data which you find on the internet. You find keys, you find ciphers, you find websites with their certs, you find all kinds of stuff on the internet. And if we want to shop for it, we just go there and find everything what is on encrypted sessions, signs. We try to cyber us, cyber, yeah. That's a buzzword, isn't that cool, cyber? And in my conference, when you say cyber, you have to drink a Jägermeister. So I'm good for 3 drinks already. So you can collect stuff what you find everywhere. So the question is, how do we do that? We can actually go back to projects that did it already. So if we don't want to work, we can be lazy and we can use the EFF. You can download these boxes, but the results are not new. I think the results are from 2010-ish, 12-ish, something like this. But most of the servers still use the same key, so that's not really a big problem. We could, sure enough, get us 23 EC2 instances and run them through and nmap the internet. That takes a while. We can use, there was this visible internet study in 2008, but I think that's kind of old. Sure enough, the hackers of you can use a botnet. You just wait till $random botnet attacks your network and take it over and use this for enumerating. But we can doing this much faster. Has anybody played with you, from you guys played with ZMap already? Yeah, you did? You like it? They had some flaws in the beginning. I mean, it used to tend to crash always your session, but in the moment, the implementation I used worked quite well. So I tried this one. You don't like it?
No, I'm just amazed by the power of this tool.
This tool is awesome. I mean, I use it a lot, and the last time I used it, I didn't use it to enumerate the internet, but there was, I tried to sleep. It was in Tokyo in a hotel. I tried to sleep, and there was this lady on the floor, and she was Skyping all the time, and I could not sleep. So what I did was this. It dropped her call. like instantly. The amazing thing about it, even in this lousy hotel, in 10 hours I had like the whole internet. So I had to go, that was I think 22, and I had to go back to port 443 to make sure I can sleep. The question is, what do we find when we play around with it? You'll find like 30 million open ports. I did this in 2013. Maybe we need to update the numbers, right? So these numbers are a little bit older. I had like 6 million RSA keys, and you'll find about 6,000 DSA, 10 ECDA, and 200 ghost keys. Does anybody know what ghost keys are? Yeah, you know, I know, you need to know. Russian standard. Why are we on Russian standard? Want some vodka? That's my most favorite brand is Russian standard. Yes, it's the Russian standard. Do you know when they introduced it?
So that they can crack it?
No, I mean when they introduced it.
I'm not sure. 70s, 80s?
Actually, it was introduced, and that's funny because I'm with the numbers a bit. A German hacker, they always like this. It was introduced on May 23rd, 1994. So we have this with the 23, and as you could see before, I try always to do my computations that they have a 23 in there.
They also oblige you by these GOSD standards to use specific elliptic curves.
Yes.
Yeah, everything, and like they say that only these are secure. You're not allowed to use any others. Like I studied in university there, and they told us.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure. So in our results, what do we find? We find SSH keys, we find PGP, GPG stuff, we find Bitcoin, and there are some national issued documents, you name them. The SSH results is with CMAP. Here's what you can do. Don't try it here because you will crash the network when everybody tries to do that. Maybe you want to do it in a university or at home if you have a big line. 1 gigabit line, it should be done in a few hours, so that's okay. So what you find on SSH is, before we had the RSA, now we have the SSH. We have 25 million open ports. You retrieve 4 million RSA keys, and the rest numbers, you can read it by yourself. That's not really important for the talk. So the question is, how do we find? We wanna play with PGP, and we said as an attack type, analytics would be okay. Didn't we say so? So how do we analyze a PGP? What's about doing your own key server? That's an idea, isn't it? So you start your own key server and you just analyze what's on it. To start your key server, you just download it, and then you can look into it, what you find on this key server. The numbers are down here. As said, I played with it 2013. Last 2 years were too busy to play with it. We had a talk about Bitcoin at 10 o'clock today, I think. There was 2 awesome people talking about Bitcoin, right? So Bitcoin uses elliptic curve DSA. Well, DSA is kind of secure when you have a good nonce, but if your nonce is fucked up, you're not really secure. And trust me, the nonce is really fucked up by most people, since they use some snake oil to produce it. So if you want to get this Bitcoin chains, you just open yourself a Bitcoin account and you download the chains, the blockchain there, and then we can start on play with it. You will have a download which is round about 17 gigs. And that gives you like 1,870,000 keys, roundabout, and about 24 million transactions. There was this research from the guys with Bernstein and a few other guys, and they actually made a paper. And what they did is, in Taiwan, they had some government-issued ID cards, and you could do transactions with them. And they had a chip on them, and they actually broke it. You found the paper? You found the paper already? Yeah. It's an awesome paper. You need to read it. You guys should read this paper. That's awesome. The slides will be online, so you just copy-paste it out of the slides and you can download it. And what they did is they actually took over identities. They could do transactions. So we really need to think about what we're doing, because that now goes into our private sector and into our families when we have IDs been stolen. What do we look for? Sure enough, we look for repeated keys. We look on public keys, which are not really well made, and we look for shared factors. So a shared factor, as the formula would say, would look like this. Because those guys who have the shared factor use the same private key, so that's what we're looking for. So what can we do with it? We could either throw it on our instances and try a Numberfeld sieving on it. If the key is a 768-bit key, it would take 2.5 calendar years on some EC2 units, which you use. But if you use the GCD, what do you think how long we take for the same key? Almost 15 nanoseconds. I talk about $random laptop. So okay, that's okay. I'm using DSA anyway. Fuck that. Are we better off with DSA? Not really. So if we look at it on DSA, if the nonce gets known, the private key is computable. So in the beginning on DSA, it's the same like on the beginning of your keys. You need something to feed in, and on DSA we start with a nonce, and if this nonce gets known, then we can compute it. So if we find two DSA messages with the same nonce, K is easy to compute. But K is unknown, right? If we have two messages, or two actually who share the same nonce K, K can be computed from the signature of those two messages. So what we're going to do is we subtract the signatures, solve K inverse, because this all is mod Q, so K can be computed in private keys then. Who knows the birthday paradox? All right. For the rest who don't know the birthday paradox is a paradigm which says if you want to compute, if we have 23 people in a room, the chances are 50-50 that we have a collision. Right? We have a high chance of 99% as people have a different birthday, but we have already a 50% collision chance. That means that we have a collision, and that's actually what we're looking for in the crypto. Crypto, if you do crypto analysis, most of the time it's guessing, looking for collisions, looking for repetitions so that we find repeated keys and stuff. That's the way you would probably do this in Sage, if you want to play with it. So why do we talk about it? Because the randomness. We maybe have a flaws in randomness. There was this paper in FactableNet. Who knows FactableNet? So you're into crypto, aren't you? Definitely, one can tell. So FactableNet, you can find all kinds of stuff. And Bernstein, again, he had actually this little theory where he say we start an RSA modular N1, N2, N3, N4, N5, and so on. And we compute the product of these modulars on a binary tree. And we mod out the product by the square of the containing mods, containing nodes. And then our goal is to go with N1, N2, N3, N4, mod N to the power of 2, mod N1 to the power of 2, and so on, and divide it to find per GCD some non-trivial divisors. That's what we want to find out. If we find some non-trivial divisors by using the GCD, if you go by the results we found, you'll find out that you have this GCD maybe in 10 hours. If you walk this way on the binary tree, it's well written on the website. Did you find it while you're looking on it anyway? Did you find this article from him? You should check out, it's about the binary tree. It's very awesome because then what we do right now is more statistics than attack type. We analyze it. And what we do here is a statistic way of analyzing or factoring keys instead of going the hard way and using our GCDs. So if we look on our results, we'll find about, and now we're talking about private keys. We're talking about private keys from 64,000 HTTP servers. So we're talking about here private keys. Once you have private keys, you sure enough can decrypt the stuff, but you also can look for their secrets in the key. Because what I found was a guy who had a really weak private key and got his password, and at the end of the day, his new key is very strong, but the same password. That don't help. The same goes with the DSA nonces. You have a lot of these SSH DSA servers who have a collision in the nonces. And we found 150 Bitcoin addresses, which are too much if it's about money. So why is it with the DSA? You have to remember if the RSA key is not well created, most of the machines have both. So you can figure if the RSA is fucked up, DSA is fucked up too. So we have some repeated keys on SSH hosts. So why do we have repeated keys? Sure enough, there are companies who issue one key for all their websites, and you have like virtual hosting and all kinds of stuff, corporate certs, devices with default keys. But, well, where do we have the most problems? The most problems is so-called industrial-grade firewalls. We're talking about the stuff from Cisco or Juniper, some Sophos machines, stuff like this. So we do have actually a problem with our embedded devices. I did a research with AVM Fritzbox. As anybody knows this, AVM Fritzbox? It's very, very common in Germany, and it's a little router which connects you to the internet, and they really suck. So we have entropy issues. You know how this entropy is generated? Who doesn't know? Everybody know how the entropy on your Linux device is generated, right? At least you think. You don't know? All right. You think you know. At least you think you know. Because there are some surprises. Normally it should be like this. You have the def random, and that takes some keyboard timing, mouse movement, network traffic, whatever, right? And we have the def urandom. When is it good? I mean, the pseudo number generator, when is it good? When do you want this? When is it actually that you want to have that thing? It's unblocking, yeah, but there's actually a real-world application where I say it have to be there for the security. I'm not talking about for not security, I'm talking about for security, a real-world application where we need a pseudo number generator for the security. Do you think you know which one it is? What could it be? What? For parsing? What else? Padding, yeah. For what else could we use it? Everybody of you guys is using it. Telephone. They use a one-time pad, and what they do is you go, I play now, you go from your little cell phone to a tower, and in the tower it gets decrypted. Gets unencrypted to the other tower and gets back encrypted in the other cell phone. And what happens on this encryption is they XOR it out using a one-time pad, and they have a pseudo-random generator because they need to generate the same number on both sides, on the sending and on the receiving side. If we have a true random generator, that wouldn't work. That would be pain. So that's a useful way of using a pseudo-random generator. But for everything else, we might not want to do it. The problem with the random generator is its blocking behavior. So just figure you have a $random little Rudy Poo device, and this device is gonna boot up or not boot up because it doesn't have a random generator, because it don't have entropy, so it won't boot up. So to generate it, you need some software like OpenSSL or LibreSSL, whatever you prefer to use, right? But the problem lies at the seed of the randomness. So if your device don't have anything to seed randomness in, they use the default in OpenSSL, which is, who knows it? What does the smart people actually implement there? To use our, instead of having like real seed, what do they use? The time, which is awesome. So this is actually a line of code here for some people where it doesn't boot up on their little router devices. So we use the time. Well, the timing problem. Do you know which time they use? Null time, Unix time. So what's about, we have a lot of little Fritz boxes using all Unix time, and we switch them on the same time. So if we remember how we created our RSA key, right? If we have these little Fritz boxes and we switch them on all the same time, we can compute all possible seeds of the pseudo random generation. I did this. It works. So our little girl goes back to brute force. Actually, she broke into OpenSSH from her mother. So, as I just said, we have a random device which boots up on Unix time, and that's just sucks. So let's talk about trust. I'm awesome. I'm good in time. Who of you guys know how many? Actually, I had this little talk with Sekubus, and he said I should ask this question. So I asked the question: if you have a browser and it is a default installed browser on $random operation system, how many CAs do you trust? What do you say? More opinions? 100? 100 first? What? A couple dozens? 100, couple dozens? What do you think? 300? All right, so we go 300 first, second, and 300 gets it. Well, it's probably not exact 300, but we have a few hundred, and what we do is we trust a few hundred. So you trust a few hundred companies you never had a business with. I mean, you trust like a few $100 random Rudy Poo companies. You don't know in which country they are, which laws they have. Do they have a good data protection law? And you go far enough, or many people go far enough to say, oh, well, I need a cert for my website, so I go to a $random vendor and I let him create my private key. What? And even better, going back to implementation flaws, there was, before they had Nginx, there was this thing which called Apache. You remember? Back in the days? And they are like, I don't boot up, you have a password. What? So there are, if you look up in the internet, you'll find tons of forums where people find out how to remove the password of your cert, because otherwise Apache won't start. Check it out. I mean, that's awesome. That's the best snake oil you can get. So why not trust? Well, who's using Tor of you guys? TorNet, routing network? All right, cool. Why do you use Tor? Just to check it out? Other opinions? Why do you use Tor? Okay. Surfing porn?
Surfing weird porn.
Oh, surfing weird porn. Yeah, awesome. What else could you use Tor for?
Buying drugs with Bitcoin.
Yeah, buying drugs with Bitcoin. Since I'm not Jake Applebaum, I'm not going to tell you Tor is something good. I'm sorry. Okay, next question. What makes you trust people and machines you don't know and you don't have a control of? I mean, since you use Tor, you trust foreign people you never met, and you don't have a control of their machines. So what makes you trusting them?
But you do that all the time, like when you go to a hospital, you trust the monitors.
Yes, why?
Otherwise you die.
Yeah, but on Tor you don't die.
Surely only good people would use Tor.
All right.
Only the good die young.
Did you know that about 58% of all the Tor nodes are vulnerable to the timing attack, which is heavily used by our friends in Great Britain and the United States and everybody else who's playing with timing attacks? No? Yes? Yes, there's a paper which it came out a few days ago, and they figured that, well, we have a problem with timing attacks, a serious one. And they said something like 3/4 of the Tor network is monitored. And with a timing attack, does anybody know how the timing attack works? No? In a timing attack, the attacker just need to take control of an exit and entry node. And with this help, he can do some statistical analysis and find where you're from in a matter of minutes. There's a new paper out which calls measuring and migrating level of adversaries against Tor. And that is from a university. I will put this in the notes when I upload this because it's quite fresh, the paper. I will put a link up, and that is actually created by some people from a university in the United States and in Israel. And they wrote a new Tor client which reduces the problem to 5.8%, but the way Tor is made, you will not be safe against timing attacks, which means even though it's reduced to 5% or 6%, you're still vulnerable against timing attacks. That's just what it is. So if you want to hide your identity, maybe Tor is not anymore what you want to use. Maybe you just own some service in China. Maybe you just ask Shodan for IIS4 in dollar random country and use this.
Is German I2P better?
Huh?
Is German I2P system better?
I don't think so. Well, we need to create something, but what do we have else? We go for that. We go a little bit later. Now there is actually, this is some help from FX. He just sent me some slides because he had some talk about trust, and I want to ask him if I can incorporate it into my talk. So in the moment, trust is the best bet we have. The problem with trust is always not knowing. So we do trust each other after a while, but we don't know on foreign people like instances or computers and stuff. So the whole model of trust is we do trust some companies in the moment and we don't even know them. We trust protocols and we might don't verify the protocols, so we should not trust them. So what we do in the moment is more guessing and hoping that it works. That is what we do in the moment, and that's our problem. When you look back as you was a child, there was your mother with you, and she said, you can't trust this dog, but you can't trust this dog. So you had an authority which you could trust because she was your mother, right? Later on, you maybe find an authority like a good friend, and you say, this guy is okay, but this guy later on tries to bang your girlfriend. So you maybe revoke the trust. So if we look at about revocation, it's not him revoking the trust, it's you revoking the trust. So the idea is actually to first verify the trust before we start exchanging keys. We should probably first verify who it is and what his ideas are and the goals, why you should trust them. That is maybe the question in stake. So there's a few people from Germany. They have a little company right now, Packy. The idea is mainly from FX, and they work on actually on a new model where you can verify before you trust. I mean, I'm not entitled to speak about it yet because they cannot deliver, but there will be something in the pipe. And we all should ask ourselves about the trust. We all should ask ourselves, do we really trust this instance? Do we really trust the server? Even though the server is run by a friend of you, the question is, does he maintain the stuff right? Does he have a good seed? Does he generate the keys properly? All these questions are on stake if it starts with trust. So I think in this very moment, our crypto leaks a lot on implementation flaws, on big computers with analyzing, and on the trust model. We should definitely work on our trust model to make things better. And with this said, trust me, I'm open for questions. No questions? No questions? There?
I have a question regarding the timing attack.
Yes.
Would it help if you switch nodes every 20 seconds, for instance?
If you have enough trustworthy nodes, it would help. The problem with the timing attack is, I think it's like 58% of the nodes belong to the NSA and the rest to the Chinese government. So it's just a question who you trust more.
If you are switching, so they will have to have control of all the nodes that you are using.
Yeah, that's right. That's actually what the new client is doing, I guess. But you need to read the paper first. I think it will answer your question. I will put up the paper because it's not my research and I should be more careful to talk about it, about research other people did. So I think if you read the paper, it will answer your question.
Yeah, thanks.
I will put up the link with the notes. More question?
How many CAs do you trust in your browser? Did you revoke any?
I actually revoked I kicked out a lot of CAs because you cannot really trust them. But it's always a bit of hassle with links to do SSH anyway. Or HTTPS. It's with links always a bit of hassle.
I understand your last name isn't Applebaum, but still, wouldn't artificial delays help fight the timing attack?
I think that's what they try to do. I'm not totally sure what they're doing right now because I just read the paper yesterday night on toilet. But before I make comments about this paper, I prefer to read it 20 times and fully understand what the person is doing, and then I could comment it. Otherwise, I first have to do a deep research before I talk about it.
Do you think there really can be something done with the model of trust in the internet with the certificates? Because every day in life, you have to trust. You trust that when you walk the pavement, you won't get right by a car. You trust a doctor at a hospital,
Yes.
and so on and so on and so on. So life entirely relies somehow on trust to the people who you don't know. So perhaps this case in the internet and with certificates is just one presentation of the ordinary trust.
In real life, you choose the doctor you go to. That doesn't mean, let's say you're going to a dentist. He has a very, very good reputation, which you take as a model of trust for yourself. And there's another dental doctor who has a really bad reputation because it always hurts, right? You would choose your model of trust and go to the good doctor. But the good doctor and the bad doctor, they play together golf. So the good doctor trusts the bad doctor and the bad doctor trusts the good doctor. By your implication, it means just because there's a trust in between those guys and it's implemented into your teeth, you can go to both of them. So what I'm saying is not trusting. I'm saying verify before trust. And the trust model in the moment works like this. You trust all of these certified authorities need to trust each other. Otherwise it wouldn't work. And look at Apple, they like DigiNota, how long did it take to take it out? Like 3 weeks or 2 weeks until they took it out of their trust chain. They pwned the shit out of it. Or look at Apple. You know, this is like these little devices. You might hear of them, they call iThingy. And they establish a connection to whatever server in the cloud. And the server has control, and the device has control. You know who don't have a control over the device? The legitimate owner who paid for it. That's not the model of trust we should use. We should verify our sources and maybe reduce our sources. Because there are countries, they have something like a Patriot Act. I hear it from countries, they do something like this. And by this, a company maybe is entitled or even asked to publish private information. Because there are some people we gave guns and now they use them. And now we're pissed about it. So if your trust goes to a government or to a company who works in the government and is pressed by the law to give out your information, is a trustworthy company? Yes, no?
Yes.
No. For the government, yes, but maybe not for you. Because why you encrypt it all?
It doesn't mean this company is not trustworthy. I would believe it is trustworthy, but anyway, it has to oblige some laws which are higher than your
Yes.
law.
But why do
More-
you want to
more
encrypt?
important.
Why do you want to encrypt?
That's another case.
So if you want your information to go out, why not posting on Twitter or Pastebin? It's much easier. But it's not web scale. Maybe you want to do dev now, but that's another joke. But you see where I'm going to. You need to verify who you trust. More questions? Yes?
1 second. Do you have, or maybe you know where we can find some advice on which CAs should not be trusted at all, like those that are Chinese, so that we don't have to do it by hand and going through like hundreds of CAs in our
I will post some recommendations in the notes, but those are going to be recommendations because who I am that you trust me. What I recommend is you should actually stick with these guys for Peki, and you should follow up with what they're doing. They're going to publish maybe next year or something. And they on it since 2013, I think. And they will do a lot of talks about it. And you should stick with those guys and with the Langsec community. The Langsec community want to make programs better, and they want to, and the Peki guys want to make security better. So maybe we should stick with those guys and find out what they're going to do. Because my first question was, is it scalable? And they said yes. So maybe we should check this out. I'm going to post a list where smart people said you cannot trust these and these and these for that and that reason, but you're free to implement it or don't implement it just how you feel. More questions? So then, ladies and gentle nerds, you were a great audience. I thank you for having me and wish you a nice lunch.